Sarah Mitchell's knees hit the frozen earth outside Morrison's general store, and she knew this was the moment her children would remember forever. The moment their mother became a beggar. The coins scattered from her trembling hands. 47 cents. She'd counted them 3 times that morning, hoping the number would somehow change. Hoping mathematics would prove merciful for once in her life. It didn't. Mrs. Morrison stood in the doorway of her store, arms crossed over her substantial bosom face, set in the expression of righteous judgment that certain women perfected after years of church attendance and comfortable living. Behind Sarah, 3 small bodies pressed close. Thomas trying so hard to stand tall at 12 years old, shoulders back like his father had taught him, but his stomach growling loud enough that Mrs. Morrison's customers could hear it from inside. Emma with her arms wrapped around little Grace, both of them shivering in coats that had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to find. Mrs. Mitchell. Mrs. Morrison's voice carried across the street, sharp enough to turn heads, loud enough to gather a crowd. That won't even buy a pound of flour. Sarah's hands shook as she picked up the coins. Her fingers were so cold she could barely feel them. Please, I just need something. Anything, table scraps if you have them. The children haven't eaten in 2 days. Perhaps you should have thought about feeding your children before you spent every cent your husband left. The lie hit harder than the cold. James had left them nothing but debt. The horse that killed him had belonged to the bank. The saddle had been borrowed. Even the nails in his coffin had been paid for by the church charity fund. But Mrs. Morrison didn't care about truth. She cared about maintaining her position as the moral authority of Silver Ridge, Wyoming, and nothing maintained moral authority quite like publicly shaming a desperate woman. Mrs. Caldwell appeared beside Mrs. Morrison wrapped in furs that cost more than Sarah's cabin. The banker's wife, of course. Where there was suffering, Victoria Caldwell always managed to appear drawn to misery the way vultures circled dying cattle. Honestly, Mrs. Mitchell, Victoria's voice dripped with false sympathy. Some people simply aren't meant to survive out here. Perhaps you should consider going back east. Find family. Leave this territory to those of us who can actually manage. Thomas stepped forward, his young voice cracking with the fury of helpless rage. My mother manages just fine. We don't need your charity. A rock hit the snow at his feet. Sarah's head snapped up. Across the street, a boy of maybe 14 stood with a handful of stones, wearing the mean smile of someone who'd learned cruelty from his parents and perfected it with practice. The blacksmith's son. Sarah couldn't remember his name. Couldn't remember anything except the casual hatred in his eyes. Beggar boy, he called out. You and your beggar mama should leave town. Nobody wants you here. Another rock, this one closer. Stop it! Sarah tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. 5 months of grief and hunger and endless work had hollowed her out. He's just a child. Pathetic. A woman Sarah didn't recognize. Absolutely pathetic. Making those poor children stand in the cold while you beg. Have you no shame? Laughter. More people gathering. Sarah felt the weight of their eyes, their judgment, their complete absence of mercy. She thought about James, about how he'd always said Silver Ridge was a good town full of good people. He'd been wrong. Or maybe the town had been good once before Harrison Caldwell bought the bank and started foreclosing on anyone who couldn't pay. For charity became weakness and desperation became moral failure. Please, her voice broke on the word. Someone, anyone, I can work, I can clean, I can mend, I can do anything, just please. Grace started crying. Not loud, just a thin, exhausted sound that made Sarah want to die right there in the street. Because that sound meant her baby was beyond hunger, beyond hope, slipping into that dangerous quietness that children got when their bodies started shutting down. And then her knees gave out. She didn't choose to fall. Her body simply stopped cooperating. One moment she was standing, the next she was on the ground, frozen mud soaking through her skirt. Grace clutched against her chest, and Thomas and Emma grabbing at her arms trying to pull her up. Mama, please. Thomas's voice cracked completely. Mama, get up. Please get up. Someone laughed. Sarah couldn't see who. Couldn't see anything except the gray sky and her children's frightened faces and the absolute certainty that this was it. This was how they died. Slow and cold and starving in the street while the good people of Silver Ridge, Wyoming watched. Then a shadow fell across them. Sarah looked up. A man. tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat that had seen hard use and a hat pulled low against the wind. She couldn't see his face clearly, just the hard line of his jaw and something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not pity, not disgust, something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, as if he'd seen this scene before and sworn he'd never see it again. He didn't speak, just stood there, a wall between her family and the watching crowd. "Move along, stranger." Mrs. Morrison's voice had lost some of its confidence. "This doesn't concern you?" The man turned his head slowly. When he spoke, his voice was rough Western, the kind of voice that didn't make threats because it didn't need to. "Ma'am, I'm going to give you a chance to rethink that statement." "I said move along." Mrs. Morrison's face reddened. "This is my store, my property. If I want this woman and her children removed, then you'll do it yourself." The stranger's hand moved to his hip, not drawing, just as resting. But the message was clear enough that even Sarah collapsed on the frozen ground with her starving children understood it. "Because if you're asking me to move, ma'am, we're going to have a problem." Silence. Complete. Absolute. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Grace's quiet sobs, could hear Emma's sharp intake of breath. The stranger took a step forward. "Anyone else want to comment? Anyone else want to share their thoughts on this woman and her children?" No one spoke. The crowd that had been so eager to watch her humiliation suddenly found the ground fascinating. Mrs. Morrison retreated into her store. Victoria Caldwell adjusted her furs and discovered an urgent need to be elsewhere. Even the blacksmith's son dropped his rocks and disappeared around the corner. The stranger crouched down, putting himself at Sarah's level. This close, she could see his face. Maybe 30, maybe older. Hard years lived in hard country, gray eyes that had seen things she couldn't imagine. But those eyes were careful, gentle, like he was trying very hard not to scare her children more than they already were. "Ma'am, can you stand?" Sarah tried. Failed. Tried again. Thomas and Emma pushed from behind, and the stranger caught her arm, gentle, so gentle, she almost cried from that alone, and helped her up. "Thank you." Her voice came out as a whisper. "Thank you, but you shouldn't have done that. Mrs. Morrison, she'll make trouble for you." "Let her try." He glanced at the children, at Grace barely conscious against Sarah's chest, at Emma 9 years old and already carrying the weight of the world, at Thomas trying so hard to be the man his father had been preparing him to become. How long since they ate? 2 days. The admission hurt worse than the cold. Maybe 3. I lose track. The stranger's expression changed, not pity, something harder, anger, but not at her. "Wait here." He strode into Morrison's store. Sarah heard raised voices, Mrs. Morrison protesting. The stranger's response too quiet to make out, but carrying the kind of authority that ended arguments. Then he was back carrying packages. Flour, beans, bacon, coffee. More food than Sarah had seen in months. "Where's your cabin?" 2 miles east. "But sir, I can't pay you. I don't have money. I don't have anything." "Didn't ask you to pay." He handed the packages to Thomas, who took them like they were made of gold, eyes wide with disbelief. "I asked where you live." "Sir, please." Sarah was shaking now from cold and shock, and the sudden shift from despair to something that might have been hope. "At least tell me your name. Tell me who I'm thanking." He tipped his hat. "McKenna. Cole McKenna. But Cole's fine." "Mr. McKenna." She tried to steady her voice. "I'm Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. These are my children. Thomas, Emma, Grace." He nodded to each of them, his expression softening slightly as his eyes rested on Grace. "Ma'am, let's get you home before your children freeze." The walk took forever. 2 miles felt like 20. Grace fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder, her small body so light it terrified her. Emma stumbled twice, exhaustion finally overwhelming the stubborn pride that had kept her upright. Thomas carried the packages like they contained the secrets of the universe, his face set in that too adult expression that made Sarah's heart break. Cole McKenna walked beside them, leading a paint horse that looked as worn as its rider. He didn't speak much, just kept pace, watching the road ahead and occasionally glancing back as if checking for pursuit. When the cabin came into view, small and shabby with missing shingles and broken shutters, Sarah felt shame wash over her again. "It's not much. It's home." He said it simple like that explained everything. "That's enough." Inside, the temperature wasn't much better than outside. The fire had died hours ago. No wood left to feed it. Sarah had burned everything she could find, including two of James's books and the chair he'd made for their first anniversary. Cole took one look around and nodded like he'd expected exactly this. You got an axe behind the cabin, but Mr. McKenna, you've done enough, more than enough. You don't need to do this. Ma'am, when's the last time you ate? Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, couldn't remember. That's what I thought. He moved to the door. Thomas, come help me. Emma, you help your mama get that stove going. Grace, you sit right there and don't move. And just like that, her children had orders. Structure. Something to do besides be scared and hungry. Thomas followed Cole outside without question. Emma began gathering kindling from the small pile by the stove. Grace curled up in the rocking chair and watched everything with those two wise eyes. Sarah stood in the middle of her cold cabin and felt tears start. Hot, angry, grateful, terrified. Everything at once. Mama, Emma's small hand slipped into hers. He going to stay? I don't know, sweetheart. I hope he does. The girl's voice was so quiet, so careful. I hope he stays forever. Outside, the sound of an axe biting wood. Steady, rhythmic, the sound of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Sarah moved to the window and watched Cole swing the axe while Thomas stacked split wood. The man moved with easy efficiency, no wasted motion, and Thomas watched him like he was memorizing every movement. 20 minutes later, they came back inside, arms loaded with firewood. Cole had Thomas start the fire while he unpacked the supplies Mrs. Morrison had grudgingly provided. His movements were precise, economical, the habits of someone who'd spent years taking care of himself. You got a cook pot? Yes. Sarah found her voice, found her spine. Mr. McKenna, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can cook. You don't need to do this. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. Ma'am, when's the last time you stood long enough to cook a meal? Silence. Right. He found the pot himself, began measuring out beans and bacon. You sit, I'll handle this. Mr. McKenna, I'm not helpless. I can cook for my own children. I know you can, ma'am. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying you don't have to. Not tonight. Tonight you rest. Let someone else carry the weight for a few hours. The tears came then, no stopping them. Sarah sank into a chair and cried while this stranger, this man named Cole McKenna, cooked beans and bacon and made coffee that smelled like heaven. Thomas sat beside her, put his thin arm around her shoulders. It's okay, Mama. It's going to be okay. I'm sorry. She couldn't stop saying it. I'm so sorry. I should have done better. Should have protected you better. Should have found a way to feed you sooner. I'm so sorry. Mama, stop. Emma knelt at her feet. You did everything. Everything. This isn't your fault. Your daughter's right. Cole spoke without turning from the stove. I heard what happened out there. What they said. And ma'am, none of that was true. None of it. You're not failing. You're surviving. There's a difference. You don't know that. You don't know me. Don't know what I've done wrong. I know a woman who's been carrying weight that would break most men. His voice was quiet but certain. I know a woman who stood in that street and begged because her pride mattered less than her children's lives. That's not weakness, ma'am. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. The words hit harder than the rocks had, harder than Mrs. Morrison's cruelty, harder than anything, because someone saw her, really saw her, not the desperate widow, not the burden, just Sarah fighting and surviving and still standing despite everything trying to knock her down. Food's ready. Cole ladled beans into bowls. It's not fancy, but it's hot. The children descended on their bowls like wolves. Sarah started to tell them to slow down, to mind their manners, but Cole caught her eye and shook his head. Let them eat. Hunger like that doesn't care about manners. He handed her a bowl. Sarah ate slowly, trying to make it last, trying to remember the last time her stomach felt this full. The food was simple, just beans and bacon and hard bread, but it tasted like salvation. Cole ate standing up, watching the children, watching her. Not intrusive, just present, like he was making sure they were real, making sure this wasn't a dream that would evaporate when he blinked. When the bowls were empty, Grace climbed down from her chair and walked straight to Cole. stood there looking up at him with those impossibly big eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole crouched down, put himself at her level. "You're welcome, little miss. Are you going to leave?" The question hung in the air. Sarah held her breath. Cole glanced at her, then back at Grace. "I don't know yet. Maybe, maybe not. I don't want you to leave." Grace's voice trembled. "Bad things happen when people leave." Cole's jaw tightened, old grief flickering in his eyes. "I know, sweetheart. I know they do." "Then stay." Simple as that. A 4-year-old's logic. Just stay. Cole straightened, looked at Sarah. "Ma'am, I'd like to make you a proposal." A proposal. Her heart started beating faster. "I need work. You need help. Seems like we could help each other." He spoke carefully, like he'd rehearsed this. "I'll fix your cabin repair. Your fences get you through winter. In return, I get a place to sleep and meals. No money, just work and food. Fair trade." Sarah studied him. This stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere and changed everything in the space of an hour. "Why really, Mr. McKenna? Why would you do this?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then his gray eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Guilt, grief, a weight he'd been carrying so long it had become part of him. "Because 4 years ago I made a mistake, a bad one, and someone died because of it. Not directly, not exactly, but the consequences were real. A family was destroyed. Children suffered." He paused. "I can't fix what I broke, can't bring back what was lost, but I can make sure your children don't starve. Can make sure they have firewood and a solid roof. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how I start making things right." Sarah understood then. He wasn't rescuing her. He was saving himself. "1 month," she heard herself say. "We try it for 1 month. If it's not working, you ride on. No questions asked. No hard feelings. And I sleep in the barn. Not in here." "Yes, ma'am. And my children call you Mr. McKenna, not Cole. Not until I say different." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Yes, ma'am." Sarah extended her hand. "1 month, Mr. McKenna." He took it. His palm was rough, warm, solid, real. "1 month, Mrs. Mitchell." And with that handshake, everything changed. Thomas grinned for the first time in months. Emma clapped softly, hope blooming across her face. Grace climbed back into the rocking chair and fell asleep immediately, her stomach full for the first time in days. Cole gathered his saddlebags. "I'll bed down in the barn. Start on the roof in the morning. Storm's coming in a few days, can see it in the sky." "Mr. McKenna," Sarah stopped him at the door. "Thank you. I don't have words for what you did today. What you're doing, just thank you." He tipped his hat. "Ma'am, you don't owe me thanks. You owe me nothing. This is just two people helping each other survive, that's all." But it wasn't all. They both knew that something had shifted. Something had started that neither of them could name yet. When he left, Sarah sank back into her chair and looked at her sleeping children. Full bellies, warm cabin, a stranger in the barn who'd chosen to stay. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But for the first time in 5 months, Sarah Mitchell wasn't afraid of winter. She was afraid of something else entirely. She was afraid of hoping. Dawn came cold and gray. Sarah woke to the sound of hammering, and for a confused moment couldn't place it. Then memory crashed back. Cole McKenna, the stranger who'd stayed, who'd promised 1 month. She sat up too fast, head spinning. Thomas was already awake, standing at the window with his nose pressed to the glass. "He's fixing the shingles, Mama. Been up there since before sunrise." Sarah joined him at the window. Cole was on the roof, balanced on the steep pitch, like he'd been born there. He'd stripped down to his shirt, despite the cold, and she could see the muscles in his back working as he pried off damaged shingles and hammered new ones in place. "He's going to freeze up there." He brought his own supplies. Thomas pointed to a stack of materials by the barn. Shingles, nails, tar paper. He must have bought them yesterday after everything happened. Used his own money. Guilt twisted in Sarah's stomach. "We can't afford to pay him back." "He didn't ask us to." Emma appeared beside them, Grace on her hip. The 9-year-old had taken to carrying her little sister everywhere, like she was afraid to let her go. "That's what makes him different, Mama. He didn't ask for anything." The hammering stopped. Cole straightened, surveying his work, then climbed down with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent years doing hard things in hard places. When he reached the ground, he looked up and caught them watching, raised one hand in a brief wave. Thomas waved back eagerly. Emma lifted Grace's small hand and waved it for her. Sarah just stood there, frozen, feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the thin walls. I should make breakfast. She turned away from the window. We have food now, real food. I should cook. But when she reached the stove, she found it already going. A pot of oatmeal, bubbling gently coffee, made the cabin warm for the first time in weeks. He did this, Sarah's voice came out strange. Before he went to the roof? Thomas nodded. I heard him come in about an hour ago. He was real quiet. Didn't wake anyone, just got the fire going and started cooking. Sarah stared at the pot of oatmeal, at the coffee, at the evidence that someone had thought about her needs before she'd even woken up. It was such a small thing, such a basic thing, but it cracked something open inside her chest that she'd been holding closed for 5 months. Mama, Emma's voice was careful. Why are you crying? Because I've been doing everything alone for so long, I forgot what help felt like. The door opened. Cole stomped inside, bringing cold air and the smell of fresh cut wood. Morning. He hung his hat by the door. Hope you don't mind I started breakfast. Figured you could use the rest. I don't mind. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. Thank you. He moved to the basin, washed his hands with efficient movements. Roof's about half done. Should have it finished by tomorrow if the weather holds. You don't need to rush. We've managed with the leaks this long. Managed and thriving are different things, ma'am. He dried his hands. And that roof won't last another storm. Better to fix it now than rebuild the whole cabin come spring. Thomas stepped forward, shoulders back. Mr. McKenna, can I help today? I'm strong. I can carry things. Cole studied the boy, really looked at him, and Sarah saw something pass between them. Understanding, recognition, the beginning of what might become trust. Tell you what, Thomas, I could use someone to hand me tools, keep the work area organized. You think you can handle that? Thomas's face lit up like Christmas morning. Yes, sir, I can do that. Good man, Cole turned to Sarah. That all right with you, ma'am? Sarah looked at her son, at the hope in his eyes, at the desperate need for a male figure to show him how to be the man his father had been preparing him to become. She thought about all the things James would have taught him, all the lessons cut short by a spooked horse and a broken neck. Yes, but Thomas, you stay where Mr. McKenna can see you. And if he says it's too dangerous, you come straight back inside, understood? Yes, ma'am. Thomas was already pulling on his too small coat, his too thin boots. Thank you, Mama, thank you. He was out the door before she could change her mind, running through the snow to where Cole was gathering tools. Sarah watched through the window as the man crouched down to the boy's level, listened to something Thomas said, then nodded, and they walked together toward the barn. He's a good man. Emma said it soft but certain. We don't know that yet. Sarah moved to the stove, started dishing out oatmeal. We don't know anything about him. We know he stopped them from hurting us yesterday. We know he didn't have to, but he did anyway. Emma set Grace down carefully. That's enough, isn't it? Was it Sarah didn't know anymore? 5 months ago, she'd known what was enough. James's love had been enough. Their small cabin and struggling ranch had been enough. The promise of tomorrow had been enough. Then James died, and the definition of enough had shifted. Shrunk. Became simply enough food to keep the children alive. Enough firewood to keep them from freezing. Enough pride to face another day of failure. Now this stranger was redefining enough again. And Sarah didn't know how to feel about it. She made oatmeal with the supplies Cole had bought. Real oatmeal, not the thin gruel she'd been stretching for weeks. Added a precious spoonful of honey. The smell alone made her stomach clench with remembered hunger. Grace woke up and stumbled to the table, rubbing her eyes. Is Mr. McKenna still here? He's outside with Thomas. Emma helped her sister into a chair. Working on the roof. Good. Grace picked up her spoon. I don't want him to leave. They ate in relative silence. The children focused on their food with the concentration of people who'd known real hunger. Sarah forced herself to eat too, though every bite felt like theft. This was Cole's money, Cole's charity. Even if he called it something else, even if he pretended it was fair trade, They both knew the truth. She was dependent on him now, completely, and that scared her more than the hunger had. After breakfast, Emma helped clean while Grace played with her doll by the fire. Sarah watched through the window as Cole and Thomas worked together. The man showed her son how to measure cuts, how to hold tools, how to move with purpose and precision. Thomas soaked up every word like desert soil soaked rain. Around midday, Sarah made sandwiches from yesterday's bread and took them outside. Found Cole and Thomas at the fence line clearing debris and pulling out rotten posts. Lunch, she held out the plate. Thomas grabbed a sandwich, immediately too hungry to wait. Cole hesitated, then accepted one with a nod of thanks. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wanted to ask about your husband's ranch. What was he raising, cattle, horses?" The question caught her off guard. "Horses, mostly. He trained them, breaking them for saddle, teaching them to work. He was good at it. I noticed the corral's empty." Cole took a bite of sandwich, watching her carefully. "Had to sell them. After James died, the banker said I couldn't manage horses on my own. Said I should sell while I could still get decent money." The words still hurt. "So I did, all except one. A mare named Willow. She's in the barn. Too old to sell for much, but I couldn't let her go. James loved that horse." Cole nodded slowly. "Would you mind if I took a look at her, see what shape she's in?" "Why?" "Because horses are valuable, ma'am. If you still have land and a corral you could rebuild. Start small, maybe buy a young mare and a good stallion. Breed them, sell the foals. It's not fast money, but it's honest money." Hope flickered in Sarah's chest. Dangerous hope. "I don't have money for breeding stock. I barely have money for food." "Not yet." Cole took another bite. "But spring's coming. In spring, ranchers need help with branding, fencing, building. I can hire out, make enough to buy stock. If you're willing to wait, if you're willing to try." Thomas's eyes went wide. "Really, we could have horses again?" "Maybe." Cole's voice was careful. "Can't promise anything, but we could try." Sarah looked at this stranger who kept saying we instead of you. This man who was already planning months ahead when their agreement was only for 1 month. "Why do you care?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why does it matter to you what happens to this ranch?" Cole met her eyes, held them, and in his gray gaze she saw something that made her breath catch. Not pity, not obligation. Something deeper. Something that looked almost like need. "Because someone needs to care, ma'am. And right now I'm the someone who's here." The afternoon passed in the rhythm of work. Cole finished the roof sections he could reach safely, then moved to building a proper woodshed. Something with a roof to keep the firewood dry through winter. Thomas helped, learning as he went, asking questions that Cole answered with patience Sarah hadn't expected. Emma kept house, watching her little sister and starting to prepare dinner from the supplies they now had. Grace napped in the rocking chair, finally secure enough to sleep deeply. And Sarah worked at Chen's store, her first day of actual employment in 5 months. Ruth Chen met her at the door with a warm smile and a list of tasks. Edward Chen treated her like any other employee. No pity, no judgment, just business. The town people who came in stared, whispered. Some turned around and left rather than be served by the desperate widow who'd begged in the street. But others, enough others, simply bought their supplies and left. And at the end of the day, Ruth pressed $3 silver into Sarah's palm. "See you Thursday." $3. It wasn't enough. Cole had been right about that. But it was hers, earned, not given out of charity or obligation or guilt. And that mattered more than the amount. She came home to find the fence finished, the barn door repaired, the wood shelter completed, and stacked full of split logs. Cole and Thomas were in the corral with Willow, the old mare Sarah hadn't been able to sell. The horse looked better than she had in months. Coat brushed, hooves trimmed, moving with something like her old spirit. "Mama, look," Thomas called when he saw her. "Mr. McKenna says Willow's still got good years left. Says we can use her for breeding if we can find the right stallion." Sarah leaned on the fence rail and watched Cole work. He moved around the horse with quiet confidence, his hands gentle but firm, his voice low and soothing. Willow responded to him like she'd known him all her life, not just a handful of hours. "She trusts you," Sarah said. Cole looked over. "Horses are simple, ma'am. You treat them fair, they trust you." People are more complicated. Are they? Or are people just like horses, treat them fair, and they'll trust you too? Maybe. He ran his hand down Willow's neck. But horses don't lie, don't pretend, don't smile while they're planning to kick you. People do all that and more. Sounds like you've been kicked a lot. Enough times to learn. That evening they had dinner together. The five of them crowded around the table that was too small passing food and talking about their days. Thomas described everything he'd learned about fence building. Emma reported that Grace had finally learned to tie her own shoes. Grace demonstrated proud and beaming. Cole was quiet, mostly listening, occasionally answering direct questions, but never volunteering much about himself. He'd given them his worst secret that first night. Since then, he'd retreated into careful politeness. Present but distant. There but not quite. It bothered Sarah more than she wanted to admit. After dinner, Cole helped Thomas with his arithmetic while Sarah mended clothes. Emma read to Grace from their one book, a collection of fairy tales with a cracked spine and water-stained pages. The words still worked, though. The stories still transported. Mr. McKenna, Thomas said, staring at his slate. How do you figure percentages? Let me see. Cole leaned over the boy's shoulder. All right, say you've got 100 head of cattle and 20% die in winter. How many you lose? Thomas screwed up his face in concentration. 20. That's right. Now, how'd you figure that? Because 20% means 20 out of every 100. Exactly. Cole tapped the slate. It's just division, son, taking the whole and breaking it into parts. Once you understand that, the rest is easy. Son. The word slipped out so naturally that Sarah wasn't sure Cole even noticed. But Thomas did. His face lit up like Christmas morning, and he bent over his slate with renewed determination. I'll get it, Mr. McKenna. I promise I'll get it. I know you will. Cole stood stretched, winced at something in his back. You're smart, Thomas. Smarter than you think. Just takes practice. He was good with them. Too good. Sarah watched him show Thomas a calculation trick, listened to him answer Grace's endless questions with patience James had rarely managed, saw him treat Emma's observations with the seriousness they deserved. He fit. That was the problem. He fit so seamlessly into their broken family that Sarah had started forgetting he was temporary, started imagining what it would be like if he stayed. Really stayed. Not just for 1 month, but forever. And that was dangerous. More dangerous than the hunger had been. Because hope hurt worse than despair when it was ripped away. Around 8, Cole stood and gathered his coat. I should head to the barn. Let you folks get some rest. Mr. McKenna, Emma's voice stopped him. Thank you for everything today. He nodded, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Just keeping up my end of the agreement, miss. But it wasn't just the agreement. They all knew it. This was something more, something neither Cole nor Sarah were ready to name yet. At the door he paused, looked back at Sarah. Their eyes met across the small cabin, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the beginning of what might become more than survival. Then he was gone, door closing softly behind him. Sarah sat in her chair and listened to the sound of his boots crunching through snow toward the barn, listened to the children getting ready for bed, listened to Emma's soft voice reading one more story to Grace, listened to Thomas practicing his multiplication tables under his breath, and she thought about Cole McKenna, about the guilt he carried, about the way he looked at her children, about the careful distance he maintained even as he drew closer. Mama, Emma appeared beside her chair. Are you going to let him stay? After the month? I don't know, sweetheart. I think you should. The 9-year-old climbed into Sarah's lap, too big for it really, but still her baby. I think he needs us as much as we need him. What makes you say that? Because when he looks at us, he doesn't see charity work. He sees family, and people who see family don't usually have much of their own. Out of the mouths of babes. Sarah held her daughter close and wondered when Emma had gotten so wise. Wondered when her children had started seeing things she'd been too scared to acknowledge. Get to bed, baby. It's late. That night, Sarah lay in her bed and listened to her daughters breathing softly in the loft. Listened to Thomas shifting in his blankets. Listened to the wind outside and the creaking of the cabin and the distant sound of movement from the barn where Cole McKenna was probably not sleeping, probably keeping watch, probably carrying all that guilt and grief alone the way he'd been doing for 4 years. And she made a decision. Whatever happened at the end of 1 month, she was going to make sure Cole McKenna knew something he clearly didn't believe about himself, that he was worth saving too. The second week began with a shadow on the ridge. Thomas saw it first. Day 8 since Cole had arrived and the boy had taken to checking the fence line every morning the way his father had taught him. Responsible, watchful, trying so hard to be the man of the house, even though he was still just 12 years old. "Mama!" He came running back to the cabin, breath misting in the cold air. "There's someone watching us, up on the North Ridge." Sarah's blood went cold. "What do you mean watching?" "A man on horseback, just sitting there, staring down at our place." Cole appeared from the barn, moving faster than Sarah had seen him move before. "Describe him." "Big, scarred face, I think. Hard to tell from this far, but he wasn't moving, just watching." Cole's expression hardened. Not quite fear, recognition. "Matthew Briggs." He said the name quietly like a prayer or a curse. "He found me." "Who's Matthew Briggs?" Sarah heard her voice come out steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Someone from Texas. Someone I hurt." His expression hardened. "Thomas, get inside. Stay with your mother and sisters." "But Mr. McKenna, I can help. I can watch for trouble." "The best help you can give me right now is keeping your family safe." Cole's voice was gentle but firm. "Please, son, I need to know they're protected." Thomas hesitated, then nodded and ran inside. Cole turned to Sarah and she saw something in his gray eyes that made her chest tight. Guilt, old guilt that had never healed. "Is he dangerous?" She kept her voice low. "He thinks he has reason to be." "Does he?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching the distant ridge where the rider had been. "4 years ago, I killed his brother, the man I told you about. Robert Briggs. Matthew's been looking for me ever since." "What does he want? Justice, revenge?" "Sometimes those things look the same from certain angles." He glanced at her. "Sarah, I'll leave if you want me to. Right now, before he comes down here and brings trouble to your door." Sarah thought about it. Really thought about it. Thought about her children, about their safety, about the very real possibility that this Matthew Briggs would hurt them to hurt Cole. Thought about the smart thing, the safe thing, the thing that would protect her family from violence they didn't deserve. Then she thought about the last 8 days, about full bellies and warm fires and Thomas learning to be a man from someone who understood what that meant. About Emma smiling again. About Grace sleeping through the night without nightmares. About hope fragile and new but growing stronger every day. "No," she said, "you're not leaving." "Sarah, you don't understand what he might do." "Then help me understand, but do it while we prepare, not while you're riding away." Cole studied her for a long moment. His face softened, not quite a smile, relief maybe, or gratitude. "All right, but we do this smart. No one goes anywhere alone. Children stay within sight of the cabin. Doors and windows stay locked at night." He paused. "And I teach Thomas to shoot." Sarah wanted to protest, wanted to say her son was too young for guns, too innocent for violence. But James had been teaching Thomas to hunt before he died. And besides, innocence was a luxury they couldn't afford anymore. "Fine, but you teach him safety first. Responsibility. That guns are a last resort, not a first option." "Yes, ma'am." The next 3 days passed in careful tension. Cole worked during daylight, but kept his rifle close. He reinforced the barn door hinges, checked sight lines from the cabin windows, showed Emma where the storm cellar was, and made her practice the route with Grace until both girls could get there in under 30 seconds. "If I tell you to run," he explained, crouching down to their level, "you take your brother and sister and go. Don't argue, don't hesitate. Just go. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, solemn as a judge. "Is someone going to hurt us?" "Not if I can help it, but smart people prepare for the worst and hope for the best." On the 10th day, Matthew Briggs came down from the ridge. Sarah was at Chen's store working her Thursday shift. The children were home with Cole, who'd been teaching Thomas the basics of firearm safety using an unloaded rifle. How to check the chamber, how to carry it safely, how to never point it at anything you didn't intend to shoot. Matthew rode up slowly, hands visible, no weapons drawn. But his presence alone was a weapon. He was a big man, scarred and weathered, with eyes that had seen too much loss and not enough mercy. Cole stepped out of the barn, positioning himself between the rider and the cabin where the children watched from the window. "Deputy McKenna," Matthew's voice carried across the yard. "Been a long time." "I'm not a deputy anymore, Matthew. Haven't been for 4 years." "No, you're not." Matthew dismounted slowly, keeping his movements careful. "You're just Cole McKenna now, drifting cowboy, working for a widow and her children. Very noble." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, what you took from me." Matthew took a step closer. "Justice for Robert." The shooting was investigated, ruled justified by the county sheriff, the Texas Rangers, and a territorial judge. Because the law said pointing an empty gun at your own daughter is worth dying for. Matthew's voice went hard. "You had a choice, deputy. You chose to pull that trigger." Cole didn't flinch. "I gave warning. I aimed to wound. He moved at the wrong second. If I could take it back, I would, but I can't. So I live with it. Every single day." Thomas appeared in the cabin doorway, his father's old rifle in his hands. Not pointed at anyone, just held, ready. Matthew studied the boy. "That's your son?" "No, but I'm teaching him what his father would have taught him if he'd lived." How touching. Matthew's scarred face twisted. "Teaching another man's boy while mine grows up in an orphanage. You see the irony there, deputy." Every day, the two men stood facing each other across 20 feet of snow-packed earth. Sarah would learn about this later, would hear the story from Emma, who watched from the window with Grace pressed against her side. Would hear how Thomas had been brave, how Cole had been calm, how violence had hung in the air like smoke, but never quite caught fire. "I could kill you right now," Matthew said quietly. "Could shoot you where you stand. Claim self-defense. Who'd argue the widow you're working for, the children who barely know you? You could try." Cole's hand didn't move toward his gun, but his stance shifted slightly. "Ready." But Matthew, think about what that would do to those children. They've lost their father already. You'd make them watch another man die in their yard, that the justice Robert would want. "Don't talk to me about what Robert would want. Then I'll talk about what his children need." Cole's voice stayed level. "Mary, Joseph, and Daniel. They're at St. Catherine's Orphanage in San Antonio. I checked. I know where they are. I know they're fed and clothed and educated by good nuns who care about them. But Matthew, they need more than that. They need family. They need you." "You think I don't know that?" Matthew's voice cracked. "You think I haven't been trying? Orphanages don't just hand over children to broke uncles who work cattle drives for $30 a month. They want proof of stable income, a proper home, things I can't provide because I've spent 4 years tracking you instead of building a life." Emma stepped out of the cabin, 9 years old and fearless, in a way that made Sarah's heart stop when she heard about it later. "Mr. Briggs," she said, her clear voice cutting through the tension. "My daddy died 5 months ago. I know what it's like to lose someone. I know what it's like to be scared and angry and want someone to blame. But Mr. McKenna isn't the enemy. The enemy is giving up. The enemy is letting anger eat you alive until there's nothing left." Matthew stared at the child. "Little girl, you don't understand. I understand that hurting Mr. McKenna won't bring your brother back. I understand that those children in the orphanage need their uncle more than they need revenge. And I understand that my daddy would want me to forgive the horse that killed him because staying angry would only hurt me." Matthew's scarred face softened slightly. Not quite regret, not quite sympathy, but something human. "You're a brave girl," he said finally. "I learned it from my mama. She's the bravest person I know." Matthew looked at Cole, looked at Thomas standing guard with the rifle, looked at Emma and Grace in the doorway, looked at the cabin and the barn and the evidence of work and care and something that might have been family. "I'm giving you 1 week, McKenna, 1 week to tell these people the truth about who you are, about where you come from, about the fortune you're sitting on while Robert's children live on charity." His eyes narrowed. "Because if you don't tell them, I will. And then I'm going to take from you what you took from me. Not your money, not your life, your family, just like you took mine." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Cole standing in the yard with Thomas beside him and the girls watching from the doorway. Thomas looked up at Cole. Mr. McKenna, what did he mean about a fortune? Cole's shoulders sagged slightly. It means I haven't been entirely honest with you, with your mother, and it means we need to have a conversation when she gets home. When Sarah returned from Chen's store that afternoon, she found an unusual tableau. Cole sitting at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. All three children sitting across from him, silent and watchful. The tension in the room so thick, she could have cut it with a knife. What happened? She set down her basket, her heart already racing. Mama, Emma said quietly, Mr. McKenna has something to tell you. Something important. Sarah looked at Cole, saw the guilt in his eyes, the resignation, the look of a man about to lose something precious. Children go outside for a few minutes. Check on Willow. But Mama, now Emma. The children filed out reluctantly. When the door closed behind them, Sarah sat down across from Cole. Talk. He took a breath. My full name is Cole McKenna. My father was Charles McKenna of Montana. He died 4 years ago and left me everything. McKenna Ranch, 100,000 acres, 20,000 head of cattle, worth about $2 million. The numbers didn't make sense at first. 2 million. Sarah couldn't even picture that much money. You're rich. It came out flat. Statement, not question. On paper, yes. And you've been living in my barn, eating my food, working for nothing, while you could buy this entire valley. It's not that simple, Sarah. Then make it simple. Her voice stayed steady, but fury was building in her chest. Make me understand why you lied to me. I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Cole set down his coffee. Sarah, every time I tell people I'm wealthy, they change. They stop seeing me. They see money, opportunity, something they can use. You saw me, just Cole, the man who fixed your roof and played with your children and chopped wood in the cold. I didn't want to lose that. So instead, you let me feel like a charity case, let me feed you my food and worry about repaying you when you could buy everything I own 1,000 times over. I worked for every meal, every bit of shelter, with money you didn't need. Sarah stood unable to sit still anymore. Do you know what it's like wondering every day if you'll leave building hope around someone when you don't know if they're real or just passing through? And now I find out you've been what? Slumming playing cowboy while we're actually desperate. That's not fair. Fair, Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? You let me believe we were equals, that this was mutual survival. But we're not equals, Cole. We never were. You're a millionaire playing at poverty, and I'm just the convenient way for you to feel better about yourself. The words hung between them. Cruel, possibly true, definitely designed to hurt. Cole stood slowly. Is that really what you think, that this was about, making myself feel better? What else am I supposed to think? That maybe I stayed because for the first time in 4 years I felt like I was doing something that mattered. That your children gave me a reason to stop running. That you made me want to be the man you saw in me even when I couldn't see it myself. His voice stayed level, but Sarah heard the pain underneath. But you're right about one thing, we're not equals. You're stronger than I'll ever be. You've kept your children alive, kept this ranch going all alone. I just showed up and helped with the easy parts. The easy parts, Sarah's voice rose. You think any of this is easy? No. I think you make it look easy because you're that strong. He moved toward the door. I'll pack my things. Be gone within the hour. Cole, wait. You asked me to leave. I'm respecting that. I didn't ask you to leave. I asked you to explain. I did explain. You didn't like the answer. His hand was on the door. Sarah, I'm sorry for not telling you, for letting you build hope on something that wasn't entirely true. For all of it, but I need you to know something. What? Every day I was here, every moment with you and your children, that was real. The work was real, the caring was real. My feelings were real. The money doesn't change that. Then why didn't you trust me with the truth? Cole turned back. Because the last time I told someone about the money, she immediately started planning how to spend it. Started seeing McKenna Ranch instead of me. I couldn't bear for you to look at me that way. So you assumed I would. I feared you might. There's a difference. Sarah wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the betrayal and hurt. But looking at Cole's face at the genuine pain there, she realized something. He was just as scared as she was, just as broken, just as desperate for something real. I need time, she said finally. Time to think about this, about what it means, about whether I can trust you after this. How much time? I don't know, a few days, maybe longer. Cole nodded. I'll go to town, stay at the boarding house, give you space. The children will ask questions. Tell them the truth, that I wasn't honest, and you're deciding if you want me to come back. He gathered his saddlebags and walked out. Thomas met him in the yard, confusion written across his young face. You're leaving. Just for a few days, your mother needs time to think. Did we do something wrong? Cole crouched down to Thomas's level, put his hands on the boy's shoulders. You and your sisters did everything right. This is between me and your mother, adult business. But Thomas, I need you to understand something. What? I wasn't completely honest about who I am, where I come from. I have money, a lot of it. Your mother just found out, and she's hurt that I didn't tell her sooner. That's fair. That's right. But son, nothing about how I feel about you changed. Nothing about what I've taught you was a lie. You understand? Thomas's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Are you coming back? If your mother wants me to. What if she doesn't? Cole's throat worked. Then I respect her choice. And I hope you remember that a man's worth isn't measured by his money or his mistakes. It's measured by how he treats people when nobody's watching, how he shows up when things are hard, how he loves even when it's scary. You remember that, Thomas? Promise me. I promise. Cole mounted his horse and rode toward town, leaving 3 confused children and 1 furious woman behind. Emma found Boucherie in the cabin sitting at the table with her head in her hands. Mama, what happened? Mr. McKenna lied to us about who he is, about where he comes from. Is he dangerous? No, baby, he's just rich, very rich, and he didn't tell us. Emma processed this. Is that bad? I don't know. It feels bad. It feels like he was pretending. But Mama, Grace climbed into Sarah's lap. Mr. McKenna didn't pretend to be nice. He was just nice. Does money change that? Children's wisdom, simple and devastating. Sarah held her youngest daughter close and tried to figure out if Cole's wealth changed anything real. The roof was still fixed. The children were still fed. The work he'd done was still done. The feelings that had been growing between them were still there, lurking under the anger and hurt. But trust, that was the question. Could she trust a man who'd kept such a massive secret? Could she build a life with someone who hadn't been fully honest from the start? She didn't have an answer yet. That night, Cole sat in a small room at Silver Ridge's boarding house and composed a telegram. 2, actually, both going to Montana. The first to his lawyer. Need full property search. Silver Ridge, Wyoming. Harrison Caldwell's land acquisitions. Also territorial marshal contact. Fraud investigation protocols. Authorized 10,000 legal fund. Explain later. McKenna. The second to his foreman, Tom. Need breeding stock shipped. 2 young mares proven bloodlines. Also cash reserve accessible Silver Ridge Bank. 5,000 immediate, more if needed. Trust me. Cole. The telegraph operator looked at the amounts and whistled low. That's a lot of money, mister. It's going to save good people from a bad man, and maybe earn back trust I lost through stupidity. Cole sent the telegrams and walked back to his room, sat on the narrow bed and stared at the wall. He'd known this moment would come eventually, known he couldn't keep his identity secret forever. He just hoped for more time, more foundation, more trust built before the truth came out. Now Sarah was hurt, and the children were confused, and Matthew Briggs was circling like a wolf, and Cole had made everything worse by not being honest from the start. He thought about riding back to Montana, disappearing again. It would be easier, cleaner, no messy emotions or complicated relationships or children looking at him like he'd hung the moon. But then he thought about Thomas's face when they'd finished the roof, about Emma's observation that he'd been teaching them about forgiveness, about Grace climbing into his lap and declaring they were family now, about Sarah's eyes when she looked at him, trust beginning to bloom despite her fear. He couldn't run, not this time. Even if Sarah ultimately decided she didn't want him, he had to stay and face it. had to prove to himself that he could stand still when things got hard. So he stayed in that small room and waited, and hoped. On the morning of day 12, things got worse. Sarah was home with the children when Harrison Caldwell arrived. Three men with him, all carrying papers, all wearing the expressions of people about to do unpleasant business with legal backing. "Mrs. Mitchell," Caldwell tipped his expensive hat, "I'm afraid there's a problem with your mortgage." Sarah's blood went cold. What mortgage? James paid that off 2 years ago. According to bank records, payments were never received. The property is in default. He held out official-looking papers. "I'm here to serve you with foreclosure notice. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." "That's impossible." Sarah grabbed the papers, hands shaking. "I have receipts, proof of payment, every single one." "Receipts can be forged, Mrs. Mitchell." "You're calling me a liar." "I'm saying the bank's records are very clear, and unfortunately the bank's records are what the territorial court will accept as evidence." Thomas stepped forward. "You can't do this. This is our home." "Son, I'm just following the law. If your mother had managed her finances better, we wouldn't be in this situation." Emma appeared beside her brother. "You're lying. We know you're lying." Caldwell's expression hardened. "Little girl, you'd best watch your tone. This is adult business." "This is theft." Sarah's voice came out steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. "And I'm going to fight it. I'm going to Chen's store right now, and I'm going to show them my receipts, and we're going to prove you're committing fraud." "By all means, try," Caldwell smiled. "But you have 48 hours, Mrs. Mitchell. The law is very clear about that. 48 hours, then I'm bringing the marshal and you'll be forcibly removed." He left with his men, leaving Sarah standing in her yard holding papers that could end everything. She ran to Chen's store, children in tow. David Chen examined her receipts carefully, his face growing darker with each page. "Sarah, these are legitimate, every one of them. Caldwell is absolutely committing fraud. Can you prove it?" "We can try, but it'll take time. Need to contact the territorial marshal's office, file formal complaints, gather evidence from other ranchers he's done this to." "I don't have time. I have 48 hours. Ruth Chen appeared from the back room. "Then we need help, legal help, someone with resources and connections." Sarah's heart sank. "I need Cole." She found him at the boarding house, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at nothing. When he opened the door and saw her face, he was on his feet immediately. "What happened?" "Caldwell is trying to take the ranch. Fraud. Forged records. I have 48 hours before he brings the marshal to force us out." Cole's expression went hard. "Let me get my coat." They talked on the walk back, fast and urgent. Cole explained what he'd already put in motion. The telegrams to Montana, the lawyer investigating Caldwell's pattern of fraud, the territorial marshal contact. "How did you know?" Sarah asked. "Because men like Caldwell follow patterns. He tried the same thing in Montana 5 years ago. My father's lawyer stopped him. I figured he'd moved here to try again where people didn't know his methods." "You've been investigating him?" "Since the second day I was here. Something about the way people talked about the Benning didn't sit right. So I started asking questions, making notes, building a case." Sarah stopped walking. "You were protecting us even then." "I was protecting everyone. Sarah, I've spent 4 years running from responsibility, from guilt, from anything that might require me to actually stand and fight. But when I saw what Caldwell was doing, I couldn't run, couldn't pretend I didn't see it. Because if I have $2 million and I let children lose their homes, what's the point of having the money at all?" They reached the cabin. Thomas ran out to meet them. "Mr. McKenna, you came back." "Wasn't ever really gone, son. Just giving your mother space." He looked at Sarah. "If you'll have me, I'd like to help fix this." "I was wrong," Sarah said quietly. "What I said before, about you slumming about this being charity. I was scared and hurt, and I lashed out. But Cole, you were right. The work was real. The caring was real. I can see that now. Does that mean I can stay? It means we face this together, like partners, like equals." She held out her hand. "No more secrets. No more secrets." He took her hand, held it. "Sarah, there's more coming. Matthew Briggs is still out there. And when word gets out about who I really am, things are going to get complicated." Then we'll handle complicated together. They went inside and planned. Cole spread out maps and documents he'd been gathering, showed her the pattern of Caldwell's fraud, explained how he'd connected it to similar schemes in Montana and Texas. Territorial Marshal William Hayes is already investigating. My telegram provided the evidence he needed to move forward. He should be here by tomorrow morning with federal arrest warrants. Tomorrow morning, we only have 48 hours. Trust me, Hayes is efficient, and he hates fraud more than anything. That evening, the community began to gather. Ruth and David Chen arrived first, bringing food and solidarity. Then neighbors Sarah barely knew. Ranchers from adjoining properties. The blacksmith whose son had thrown rocks arriving with apologies and offers of help. Even Marshall Stone from town, unofficial but present. Word had spread, Caldwell was making his move, and Silver Ridge was circling its wagons. Cole stood on the porch and addressed them all. Harrison Caldwell has committed fraud against at least 12 families in this valley. He's used forged documents, fake mortgage defaults, and intimidation to steal land and consolidate water rights. Mrs. Mitchell is just his latest target, but she's going to be his last. How do we know you're telling the truth? Someone from the back. Because I've been documenting everything for 10 days. Because Territorial Marshal Hayes is arriving tomorrow with evidence that will put Caldwell away for 20 years. And because I'm Cole McKenna of McKenna Ranch, Montana, and I didn't survive my father's empire just to watch good people lose their homes to corruption. The name landed like a thunderbolt. Cole McKenna, the McKenna Ranch. People who'd heard stories, knew the reputation, suddenly understood exactly who'd been sleeping in Sarah Mitchell's barn. You're that McKenna. David Chen's eyes went wide. Oh, I am, and I'm using every resource I have to stop Caldwell. Not because I'm noble, because it's right. The next morning, day 13, Harrison Caldwell arrived early with his hired men, ready to enforce his fraudulent foreclosure, ready to take Sarah's home. He found instead a yard full of armed neighbors, found Marshall Stone standing on the porch with official territorial documents, found Cole McKenna beside Sarah Mitchell, both of them calm and united. Caldwell, Cole's voice carried across the yard. You're done. I have legal papers, court orders. You have forgeries, and in about 30 minutes you're going to have federal arrest warrants. Cole checked his pocket watch. Territorial Marshal Hayes is riding in from the east, with 3 deputies and enough evidence to put you in prison until you're an old man. Caldwell's face went white. You're bluffing. Try me. They waited, tension thick enough to choke on. Caldwell's men looking increasingly nervous, the community standing firm, Sarah's children watching from the cabin window. Then the sound of horses, multiple riders approaching fast. Marshal William Hayes rode up with deputies flanking him, badges gleaming in the morning sun. Harrison Caldwell. Hayes dismounted holding papers. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft and corruption of public office. This is a mistake. Caldwell's composure cracked. I have documentation. You have forgeries. We have the real records. We have testimony from 12 ranchers you defrauded. We have your bank's internal documents showing systematic fraud going back 5 years. Hayes nodded to his deputies. We also have McKenna Ranch lawyers who were very thorough in their investigation. Caldwell's eyes found Cole. You did this. I documented what you'd already done. You did this to yourself. They took him away in chains. His men scattered. His empire crumbled in the space of an hour. Marshal Hayes approached Sarah. Mrs. Mitchell, your land is secure. All fraudulent findings will be expunged from record. You own this ranch free and clear. What about the other families? Caldwell's properties will be liquidated, restitution paid. Every family he stole from will be made whole. Hayes turned to Cole. That was good work, McKenna. Your father would be proud. After everyone left, after the crisis passed and the community celebrated, and life began returning to something like normal, Sarah and Cole found themselves alone by the creek. You saved us, she said simply. We saved each other. He took her hand. Sarah, I need to tell you everything. No more secrets. No more holding back. Are you ready? Yes, so he told her. About his father building an empire from nothing. About inheriting it and feeling unworthy. About the shooting that had haunted him. About Matthew Briggs and the children in the orphanage. about running for 4 years, working odd jobs, trying to earn the right to live with himself. And then I found you, he said quietly. Found your children, found purpose, found a reason to stop running. Sarah, I don't know if I deserve this. Deserve you, but I want to try. Want to be the man you see when you look at me. Cole McKenna. She turned to face him fully. I see a man who saved my family, who worked himself to exhaustion fixing our home, who taught my son to be brave and my daughters to hope again. I see someone broken trying to heal, just like me. Are we too broken? Maybe we're broken in ways that fit together. He cupped her face gently. Can I kiss you? Really kiss you without interruptions or secrets between us? You'd better. He kissed her then, soft at first, then deeper. Sarah rose on her toes, arms around his neck, letting herself fall into the moment, into the trust, into the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real from all this broken. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Grace's voice carried from the cabin. They're kissing. Mama and Mr. McKenna are kissing. Emma's response floated out the window. About time. They laughed against each other's mouths, foreheads pressed together. Your children have no sense of privacy, Cole murmured. They're invested in our happiness. There's a difference. Sarah, there's one more thing. Matthew Briggs is still out there, still planning something. This isn't over. Then we'll face it, together, as partners. As partners. He kissed her again, softer this time. I love you, Sarah Mitchell. I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring this out. But I love you. I love you too. The words came easier than she expected. And you're right, it's too soon. It's too complicated. But I don't care. I'm done being careful. Done protecting myself from hope. You're worth the risk, Cole McKenna. Even with all my baggage, especially with your baggage, because that baggage made you the man who stopped for us, who saw us when everyone else looked away, who chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. They walked back to the cabin, hand in hand, found all three children waiting on the porch, grinning like they'd won a prize. So, Thomas said, trying to sound adult, does this mean Mr. McKenna is staying permanently? If he wants to, Sarah said. I want to. Cole squeezed her hand. But there's still Matthew Briggs to deal with. Still complications to work through. We'll work through them, Emma declared. That's what families do. Families. The words settled over them all like a blessing. That night after the children were asleep, Sarah and Cole sat on the porch and watched the stars, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. Both of them finally carefully allowing themselves to believe this might actually work. What happens when Matthew comes back? Sarah asked quietly. I face him, make it right if I can, or at least try. What does making it right look like? I don't know yet, but Sarah, I promise you this. Whatever happens, I'm not running anymore. I'm staying. I'm fighting. I'm being the man you and your children deserve. That's all I need to hear. They sat in comfortable silence until the cold drove them inside. Cole walked toward the barn, then stopped. Sarah, yes. When this is all over, when Matthew's settled and the dust clears and we've had time to build something solid, I'm going to ask you something important, and I hope you'll say yes. Her heart stuttered. What are you going to ask? Not yet. Not until I've earned the right to ask. He smiled. But soon, I promise. He left her standing in the doorway, heart racing, hope blooming so fierce it almost hurt. Whatever came next, whatever storms still waited, they would face them together. And that was enough. That was everything. Matthew Briggs returned on a Tuesday morning when the sky was that particular shade of gray that promised either snow or salvation. Sarah was in the cabin making bread, her hands working the dough with the rhythm of someone who'd finally stopped being afraid of tomorrow. The children were scattered through the house, Thomas reading at the table, Emma teaching Grace her letters, the comfortable case of family. Cole saw the rider first. He'd been in the barn checking on Willow, but something made him look up. Some instinct honed by 4 years of running and expecting pursuit. He stepped into the yard and saw Matthew Briggs sitting on the porch like he owned it, shotgun, across his knees, expression unreadable. Wondered when you'd come back, Cole said, keeping his voice level. Promised you a week. Been 10 days. Figured I gave you extra time to get your affairs in order. Cole walked forward slowly, hands visible. The children are inside. I know. Saw them through the window. Cute kids. Be a shame if something happened to them. Matthew. Cole stopped 20 feet away. You threaten those children, and we're going to have a very different conversation than the one I planned. What conversation did you plan? The one where I offer you everything I should have offered 4 years ago. Matthew's finger moved near the trigger. I'm listening. How much do you need to get Robert's children out of that orphanage? The question clearly wasn't what Matthew expected. His face shifted. Confusion. Suspicion. Why? Because I can't bring Robert back. Can't undo what I did. But I can make sure his children have what he wanted them to have. So tell me, how much? Matthew was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. St. Catherine's wants $500 for their care to date. Then I need a place. House furniture, everything 3 kids need. Figure another $1,500, maybe $2,000 total. Done. What? I'll give you $50,000. The number hung in the air like something physical. Matthew stared at Cole like he'd spoken a foreign language. 50,000, are you insane? 2,000 gets them out. 50,000 gives them a future. Cole took a step closer. Matthew, listen to me. 5,000 for immediate needs. House furniture supplies. 15,000 for Mary's education. She'll be able to go to college. 15,000 for Joseph. Same. 15,000 for Daniel. Your brother's children won't just survive. They'll thrive. They'll have everything Robert would have given them if he'd lived. This is guilt money. This is redemption money. For me, yes, but mostly for them. They didn't ask for any of this. Didn't ask for their father to be desperate. Didn't ask for me to make that shot. But they're paying the price anyway. Let me help them, Matthew. Let me do this one thing right. The cabin door opened. Sarah stepped out, taking in the scene. The shotgun, the tension, Cole's careful stance. Mr. Briggs, her voice was calm, steady. I'm Sarah Mitchell. These are my children you've been threatening. I think we should talk. Ma'am, this is between me and the deputy. No, it's not. She walked down the steps, positioning herself beside Cole. Not in front, beside. Partners. Robert Briggs had 3 children who need their uncle. You've spent 4 years hunting the man who killed their father. But Mr. Briggs, those 4 years are gone. You can't get them back. The question is, what you do with the years you have left? Matthew's hands tightened on the shotgun. You don't understand what he took from me. You're right, I don't. But I understand loss. My husband died 5 months ago, left me with 3 children and no way to feed them. I begged in the street while people laughed. I was ready to give up, ready to let us all freeze rather than face another day of failure. She moved closer to Matthew, fearless in a way that made Cole's heart stop. Then this man showed up. This guilty, broken, drifting man who thought he didn't deserve to live. And you know what he did? He stayed. He worked. He taught my children that second chances are real, that redemption is possible, that love can grow even in the hardest soil. Matthew's eyes were wet now. Robert was a good man. He didn't deserve to die. No, he didn't. Sarah's voice was gentle. And Cole doesn't deserve forgiveness. But those children deserve their uncle. They deserve a future. And you can give them that, not by making Cole suffer, by choosing to be what they need instead of what your anger wants. The shotgun lowered slightly. How do I know this isn't a trick? Matthew's voice cracked. How do I know he won't use this against me somehow? Cole spoke up. Because I'm going to have territorial marshal witness the transaction. Legal documents drawn up. The money goes into a trust managed by a San Antonio bank. You're the guardian, but the funds are specifically designated for the children's welfare and education. I don't get any say, don't get any control. This is for Mary, Joseph, and Daniel, not for my conscience. Emma appeared in the doorway, then Thomas, then Grace. All 3 children watching this confrontation that would determine so much. Grace, fearless as always, walked right up to Matthew Briggs. Mr. Briggs, my daddy died trying to fix a fence. The horse spooked. It was nobody's fault, just bad luck. She looked up at him with those impossibly wise 4-year-old eyes. But if someone offered to help us after Daddy died and I said no because I was angry, that would be my fault. You understand? Matthew stared down at the child. Little miss, it's more complicated than that. No, it's not. Grace's voice was certain. You can be angry or you can be a daddy to those kids. But you can't be both. Anger makes you do mean things. Being a daddy makes you do good things. Which one do you want to be? Something in Matthew broke, not shattered, more like thawed. He set the shotgun down carefully and put his face in his hands. I'm so tired, he said, voice muffled. I'm so tired of being angry, of hunting, of carrying this weight, but I don't know how to put it down. Cole sat down on the porch beside him. You put it down by choosing something better, by choosing those kids. Matthew, your brother, made a desperate choice trying to feed his family. I made a split-second decision in a terrible situation. We both did what we thought was right in that moment, and it ended in tragedy. But we can't change it. All we can do is make sure something good comes from something terrible. Robert would have hated me for wasting 4 years on revenge, Matthew whispered. Then honor him by not wasting any more. They sat in silence for a while, Sarah watching from the yard, the children clustered by the door, the moment balanced on a knife's edge between violence and peace. Finally, Matthew lifted his head. 50,000, you're serious about that? Completely serious. I'll have it transferred today. We'll go to Silver Ridge together, set up the trust, contact St. Catherine's, arrange everything. You could have those children home by Christmas. Christmas? Matthew laughed, but it was broken. Mary asked for that in her last letter, asked if Uncle Matthew could bring them home for Christmas. Then let's make it happen. Matthew extended his hand. Cole took it. The handshake lasted longer than necessary. Two men who'd been enemies finding something that might eventually become respect. I don't forgive you, Matthew said clearly. I can't, not yet, maybe not ever. I don't expect you to. I just want to help your family. Robert's family. Same thing. Matthew stood, picked up his shotgun. I'm going to hold you to this, McKenna. If this is a trick, if you try to use this against me or those children, I will come back and finish what I started. Understood. But Matthew, it's not a trick. It's just the right thing to do. After Matthew rode away with a promise to return the next day for the bank arrangement, Sarah found Cole sitting on the porch steps with his head in his hands. Are you all right? I don't know. He looked up at her. 4 years I've been carrying that weight. And in 5 minutes, a 4-year-old child cut straight to the truth. Be angry or be a daddy. How did Grace know that? Children see things clearly. They haven't learned to complicate simple truths yet. Sarah sat beside him. You did a good thing today, Cole. I did the bare minimum. Offered money I didn't earn to fix a problem I created. You offered redemption to Matthew, to those children, to yourself. She took his hand. That's not the bare minimum. That's courage. They sat together as the gray sky finally decided on snow. Soft flakes drifting down, covering the yard in white that looked like a fresh start, like possibility. Sarah, Cole said quietly, I need to tell you something. What? When this is all settled, when Matthew has those children home and we've had time to build something solid between us, I'm going to ask you to marry me. Her heart stopped. Cole, I know it's too soon. I know we have things to work through, but I need you to know my intentions. Need you to know I'm thinking long-term, forever term. Partnership that lasts until we're old and gray and watching grandchildren play in this yard. He turned to face her fully. I want to build an empire with you, Sarah. Not the money kind, the family kind, the kind that matters. Ask me now, she whispered. What? Don't wait. Ask me now. Sarah, I haven't earned the right to ask yet. You earned it the day you told me to stop begging, the day you chose to stay, the day you gave Matthew $50,000 to help children you've never met. She cupped his face. You earned it 100 times over, Cole McKenna. So ask me now. He stood, pulled her up with him, then dropped to one knee right there in the snow. I don't have a ring yet. I have my mother's ring, but it's in Montana, and I wanted to wait until I could do this properly. His voice shook slightly. But Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in everything? Will you let me be a father to your children and build a future that honors both what we've lost and what we've found? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Yes to all of it. He stood and kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise. The children cheered from the window. The snow fell harder. And somewhere in Texas, 3 children in an orphanage had no idea their lives were about to change forever. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a rush of arrangements and revelations. Cole and Matthew went to Silver Ridge and set up the trust. $50,000 transferred from McKenna Ranch accounts to a fund specifically designated for Mary Joseph and Daniel Briggs. Territorial Marshal Hayes witnessed everything, ensuring legal validity. Ruth Chen organized a community celebration when word spread about Caldwell's arrest and Matthew's redemption. Food appeared, music, dancing in the Mitchell yard despite the cold. Silver Ridge remembering how to be a community again instead of just frightened individuals. Cole stood on the porch and addressed them all. Harrison Caldwell stole from you. Stole land and dignity and hope. That's ending. Marshal Hayes is ensuring restitution. Every family Caldwell defrauded will be made whole. And I'm establishing a community fund, $20,000 for widows, struggling families, anyone who needs help. No interest, flexible terms. We take care of our own. The response was overwhelming. Gratitude, relief, hope blooming across tired faces. But the moment Sarah remembered most clearly came later that evening. After the celebration wound down and most people had left, Matthew Briggs approached them with 3 children in tow. Mary, 10 years old with dark hair in her father's eyes. Joseph, 8, serious and watchful. Daniel, 6, holding tight to his uncle's hand. Wanted them to meet you before I lost my nerve, Matthew said. Wanted them to see that good people exist. Cole crouched down to the children's level. Mary, Joseph, Daniel, I'm Cole. I knew your father. He loved you very much. Mary, the oldest and bravest, stepped forward. Uncle Matthew said you tried to help him. That something went wrong. That's right. I was a lawman. Your father was in trouble. I made a choice and your father died because of it. I'm sorrier than I can ever express. Uncle Matthew said you gave us money so we could have a house. This from Joseph. I did, because you deserve a home and a family and everything your father wanted to give you. Little Daniel looked up at Cole with solemn eyes. My daddy died trying to feed us. Uncle Matthew said that's not your fault. Said sometimes bad things just happen. Your uncle is a wise man. Mary extended her small hand. My pa used to say everybody makes mistakes. Good people try to fix them. Thank you for trying to fix yours, Mr. McKenna. Cole took her hand, his own trembling. You're very much like your father. He'd be proud of you. After they left, after promises to visit once the family was settled in Texas, Sarah found Cole in the barn. He was sitting in the stall with Willow, face buried in the mare's neck, shoulders shaking. She didn't say anything, just sat beside him and held him while he cried. For Robert Briggs, for 4 years of guilt, for the weight he'd carried and was finally slowly learning to put down. It doesn't make it right, he said, finally, voice rough. Giving them money doesn't bring their father back. No, but it gives them a future. That matters, Cole. That matters so much. 2 weeks later, they married. Simple ceremony at Silver Ridge Church. The whole territory attended. Ruth Chen stood for Sarah. Marshal Hayes stood for Cole. Thomas, Emma, and Grace stood between bride and groom, making it clear this was a family uniting not just 2 individuals. Reverend Walsh kept it brief, talked about second chances and communities supporting their own and love that survives hardship. When he pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. The kiss was soft, reverent, a promise made public and binding. At the reception afterward, Cole pulled Sarah aside. I have something for you. He opened a small box. Inside was a silver ring with a blue stone. Simple, beautiful, clearly old. This was my mother's. Only thing I kept from home. My father gave it to her when they had nothing but each other and a dream. I want you to have it. Sarah's hand shook as he slipped it on her finger. Perfect fit, like it had been waiting for her all along. I love you, Cole McKenna. I love you, Sarah McKenna. He tested her new name, smiled. That sounds right. It sounds perfect. They danced under the stars. The children played with other children. The community that had watched Sarah beg in the snow 6 weeks ago now celebrated her triumph. And somewhere in Texas, Matthew Briggs was signing papers to bring 3 orphans home. Spring came early that year. By March, the snow was melting and grass starting to green. Cole used the last of his savings to buy 2 young mares quality breeding stock from Montana, arranged to borrow a proven stallion from a neighboring ranch. By summer, we'll have foals on the ground, he explained to Thomas, as they worked on expanding the corral. By next year, we'll have stock to sell. Year after that, Mitchell McKenna Ranch will have a reputation for quality horses. Mitchell McKenna Ranch. Thomas grinned. That's what we're calling it. Your mother's name comes first. Always. This was her place before I got here. Will be her place long after I'm gone. Sarah, overhearing from the porch, felt her eyes sting. Cole never missed an opportunity to honor James. To make clear, he wasn't replacing anyone, just adding to what already existed. Cole, she called, can you come here a moment? He jogged over. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's right. She took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. I'm pregnant. He stared at her. Pregnant? We're having a baby. Due in October. The joy that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. A baby. Sarah, we're having a baby. We are. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. The children came running. When they heard the news, the celebration started all over again. That summer, a letter arrived from Texas, Matthew's handwriting neat and careful. Dear Cole and Sarah, the children are home, really home. Mary is at the top of her class. Joseph wants to be a rancher like his pa. Daniel follows me everywhere, calls me Papa Matthew now, which makes me cry every time. Mary asked if she could write to you. I'm enclosing her letter. She has questions about her father. If you're willing to answer honestly, I think it would help. You didn't just give us money, you gave us a future. Robert would be grateful. I know I am. Your friend Matthew Briggs. Inside was a second letter in a child's careful script. Dear Mr. and Mrs. McKenna, Uncle Matthew says you knew my pa. Can you tell me what he was like? I'm starting to forget his voice. That scares me. Also, thank you for helping us. Uncle Matthew says you didn't have to, but you did anyway. That means you're good people. Your friend Mary Briggs. P.S. Daniel wants to meet you. Can we visit? Cole wrote back that evening. Dear Mary, your father was brave. He loved you, your brothers, and your mother more than anything in the world. He made a hard choice trying to take care of his family in an impossible situation. I wish I'd made a different choice that day. But since I can't change the past, I'm trying to honor your father's memory by making sure you have everything he wanted for you. You're always welcome to visit. Spring is beautiful in Wyoming. Your friend, Cole McKenna. Fall came with gold leaves and cool mornings. Sarah's pregnancy progressed smoothly. Thomas, now 13, managed significant aspects of the horse operation under Cole's guidance. Emma kept the books with mathematical precision that impressed even the Montana accountants. Grace, fearless as ever, was already training the young horses with skill beyond her years. On October 15th, Sarah went into labor. Ruth Chen attended. The birth was long but uncomplicated. And when the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with strong lungs, in his father's eyes, Cole held him with shaking hands. Samuel, Sarah said softly. We'll call him Samuel, after James, so he knows he's connected to what came before, not just what comes after. Cole's eyes were bright. Samuel McKenna, that's perfect. He understood what Sarah was doing, honoring the past while building the future, making sure James's memory lived on in this child who would never know him, but would carry his name forward. Winter came and went. Samuel grew. The ranch prospered. Letters arrived regularly from Texas. Mary, Joseph, and Daniel were thriving under Matthew's care. The trust fund ensured their education. The house was full of love. Robert Briggs' children had what he died trying to give them. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Sarah and Cole sat on the same porch where he'd first kept watch. Baby Samuel asleep in Sarah's arms. The older children playing in the yard. The ranch stretching around them, productive and alive. Do you remember this time last year, Sarah asked, when I fell in the snow outside Morrison's store? Every detail, worst and best day of my life. Why best? Because I found you, found them, found purpose, found myself. He took her hand. Sarah, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd kept riding that day? Every night, and every morning I wake up grateful you stopped. I almost didn't. I saw the crowd and thought about how much easier it would be to just keep going, to not get involved, to let someone else handle it. What changed your mind? Cole thought about it. Grace, I saw her in your arms, barely conscious, and I remembered that little girl in Texas, Robert's daughter, the one who screamed at me. And I thought, if I ride past this, if I let these children suffer when I can help, then I really am the monster she called me. So I stopped. One decision changed everything. One decision saved me. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their family. Thomas teaching Joseph Briggs visiting for the week how to break a young horse. Emma showing Mary her bookkeeping system. Grace and Daniel racing through the yard laughing. Samuel gurgling contentedly in his mother's arms. We should tell them, Cole said suddenly. Tell them what? The whole story, all of it. They're old enough now. They should know how we got here, how this family was built from broken pieces. Sarah considered this. You think they're ready? I think they need to know that good things can come from bad situations. That redemption is real. That second chances matter. So that evening after dinner, they gathered everyone. Thomas, Emma, Grace, and the Briggs children who were visiting, told them the complete story. About Robert Briggs and the bank robbery, about the shooting and the orphanage, about Matthew's 4-year hunt, about $50,000 that bought redemption instead of revenge. The children listened rapt. When the story finished, Mary spoke up. Mr. McKenna, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still feel guilty about my pa? Cole didn't hesitate. Every day, but Mary, I've learned something. Guilt that just sits there and hurts doesn't help anyone. Guilt that drives you to do better, to help others, to build something good from something terrible. That kind of guilt has purpose. Your father died. I can't change that. But I can make sure his death meant something. That his children had futures. That other families didn't suffer the way yours did. That's how I live with the guilt. Mary nodded slowly. I think my pa would like that. I hope so. Daniel, 6 years old and still young enough for simple truths, climbed into Cole's lap. Mr. Cole, are you my friend? I hope I am. Good, because friends help each other, and you helped us a lot. The clarity only children possess, cutting through years of adult complexity. The years passed with the steady rhythm of seasons and growth. Thomas became a territorial marshal at 22, known for fairness and wisdom beyond his years. Emma revolutionized cattle accounting and taught her methods at the new agricultural college. Grace earned a reputation as the best horse trainer in 3 territories. Samuel grew strong and curious, a bridge between past and future. The twins Rose and Hope arrived 2 years later, filling the house with chaos and joy. And baby James, named for the grandfather he'd never meet, completed the McKenna family 5 years after that. But the moment that mattered most came 10 years after that first day in the snow. Spring 1893. Thomas, now 22 and married, brought his new wife Anna Chen to visit. David and Ruth's daughter. The family connections deepening and interweaving. They gathered for dinner. Multiple generations around an expanded table. Sarah and Cole graying but still strong. Their children and the Briggs children, now young adults, successful and thriving. Thomas's new bride. The sound of laughter and stories and family. After dinner, Daniel Briggs, now 16, approached Cole. Mr. McKenna, Uncle Matthew told us what happened to my pa. Told us everything, the whole truth. Cole went still. Daniel, I'm sorry. If you have questions or anger or anything you need to say, I'll listen. I just have one question. What? You've spent 15 years trying to make it right, trying to fix what happened. When does that end? When do you forgive yourself? The question hit like a fist. Cole looked around the table. At Sarah, his partner in everything. At Thomas, who'd become the marshal Cole had been. At Emma, brilliant and kind. At Grace, fearless and gentle. At Samuel, who carried James's name forward. At all the children who'd grown up knowing that redemption was possible because they'd watched him earn it day by day. Maybe I already have, he said slowly. Maybe forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a lifetime of choosing to do better, of showing up, of loving people even when it's hard, of building something good from something terrible. Daniel nodded. That's what Uncle Matthew said you'd say. He wanted me to tell you something. What? That my pa would be proud, not of what happened, but of what you did after, of the man you became, of the family you built. Uncle Matthew says that's real redemption, the kind that lasts. Cole's throat closed. Thank you for telling me that. And Mr. McKenna, one more thing. Yeah, I want to come work for you this summer, learn the horse breeding business. Uncle Matthew says it's the best program in the territory, says I could learn a lot. Cole looked at Matthew, who nodded. Boy's got talent with the animals. Could use proper training. I'd be honored to teach you, Cole said. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Sarah and Cole sat on their porch one more time, watching the stars, listening to the quiet sounds of a ranch at peace. Do you ever think about that day, Sarah asked, when you found us in the snow, every single day? Do you regret stopping? Not for 1 second. Best decision I ever made. Even with all the complications, the guilt, Matthew Caldwell, all of it, especially because of all that. Sarah, if I'd kept riding, I'd still be drifting, still running, still hollow. You gave me a reason to stop, to stand, to fight. You gave me a family and a purpose and a life worth living. We saved each other. Every single day we keep saving each other. They sat in comfortable silence. Behind them, the house full of sleeping children. Around them, the ranch they'd built together. Above them, the stars that had witnessed their journey from desperation to triumph. Sarah's voice was soft. Cole McKenna, do you know what I'm most grateful for? What? That you were broken in exactly the right way. That your guilt drove you to stop instead of keep riding. That your need for redemption matched my need for hope. We were broken in ways that fit together. Like puzzle pieces. Exactly like puzzle pieces. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of spring grass and horses and the promise of tomorrow. Somewhere in the house, young James started crying. Sarah stood to tend to him, paused. Coming to bed soon. In a minute. Just want to sit here and be grateful for a while. She kissed the top of his head and went inside. Cole stayed on the porch counting his blessings. A wife who trusted him when she had no reason to. Children who called him father and meant it. The Briggs family, redeemed and whole. A community that had embraced him despite his past. A ranch that thrived. A life that mattered. He thought about Robert Briggs, dead 10 years now. Thought about that moment in the bank when everything went wrong. Thought about how one split second had shaped a decade. I hope you can see them, he said quietly to the stars, to Robert's memory, to whatever came after. Your children. They're magnificent. Mary's going to be a teacher. Joseph's buying his own ranch. Daniel wants to train horses. They're everything you wanted them to be. I didn't give them that. Matthew did. Your brother saved them. I just helped. But I hope you know. I hope wherever you are, you know they're safe and loved and whole. The wind answered, or maybe it was just wind. But Cole chose to believe it was Robert Briggs, finally at peace, finally forgiving. He stood and walked inside, past the children's rooms where his family slept. Thomas and Anna in the guest room, the young couple building their own future. Emma's room, though she was visiting friends in Silver Ridge. Grace's room already filled with horse training manuals and ribbons from competitions. The twins Rose and Hope sharing their room, 8 years old now, and inseparable. Samuel's room, the 10-year-old who'd someday run this ranch. And the nursery where 3-year-old James slept, the youngest McKenna, named for a man he'd never meet, but whose legacy lived on. To the bedroom he shared with Sarah. She was in bed already, lamplight, making everything warm and golden. Everything all right? She asked. Everything's perfect. He climbed into bed beside her and thought about how far they'd come. From desperate widow and guilty drifter to this, to family, to home, to love that had survived everything trying to destroy it. Outside, the snow that had started falling covered the ranch in white. But inside, everything was warm, safe, right. Cole McKenna had spent 4 years running from his guilt, spent 10 more years earning redemption. And now finally he could rest. Could be the man Sarah saw when she looked at him. Could be the father his children needed. Could be the friend Matthew Briggs had become. Jonathan Faxton had become. Could be whole. Sarah's hand found his in the darkness. Do you know what you're thinking about? Everything, and he said quietly. The shooting, the guilt, the drifting, the widow in the snow, the decision to stop. One decision, she whispered. One decision, one moment. Everything changed. Thank you, he whispered to Sarah, to his children, to the universe. Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for stopping, she whispered back. They slept that night with their family surrounding them and their ranch spreading out into the darkness. Imperfect, complicated, built from broken pieces and second chances, but real. So real it hurt sometimes with how much he loved it. And when Cole McKenna finally closed his eyes, he didn't see that bank in Texas or Robert Briggs falling or a little girl screaming. He saw Sarah's face that first day, saw her knees hitting the frozen earth, saw the moment he'd chosen to stop running and start living, saw redemption, hard won, carefully built, finally earned. That was enough. That was everything.